All right, day 497 of going live. Just before we get started, new podcast alert, everybody. If you have not seen the latest podcast I did with Amy Cow and Sherry, Sherry was a returning guest. She helped me co-host it, but she learned so much of what she knew about grants and nonprofits from Amy. And we brought Amy onto the podcast because she decided to come out of retirement to help people learn from her on how she was able to get people, housing authorities, agencies, organizations, over 172 million in grants over her career. 172 million. Talk about experience, talk about lessons learned. You definitely want to check out the latest podcast I did with Amy Kell right on youtube.com/@Kent_G. Okay. Now, the other podcast is probably relevant today is the podcast I did with Daisy Sebastian. And this is where she covered, she's a property manager in Birmingham, but she covered exactly some of the top markets in Birmingham, especially for Section 8 renters. So today, that's going to lead into why we're looking at properties today in Birmingham. Now, if you've been following what we've been doing, right? So during the podcast with Daisy, she pointed out the Center Point is a very great area for families that's looking for stability, that's a little bit more quiet, relatively close to some shopping areas, so they don't have to go too far. And that's why we're looking at areas today. Now, specifically, I'm looking at properties that are 4-bedroom plus. These are single family homes, and they've been on Redford for less than 3 days. Now, I'm only looking at properties that are coming onto the market in the last 3 days because I am tracking the after repair value for all the properties in this market. Now, if you've been following what we've been doing, we've been tracking properties that have been on the market and sold over the last 12 months, the last 3 months, and now we're tracking properties that are coming onto the market recently and what they are being listed at. And the reason I'm tracking what's happening to the market today is because, well, if you understand what affects the 30-year mortgage interest rates, that is heavily dependent on the 10-year yield, 10-year treasury yield. And if I look at the 10-year yield, right, let's look at the last 12 months. You can see that it topped out around 4.8. It touched that again recently, just a few weeks ago, and it bottomed out in the last 12 months at around 3.6 in September and October. Now, when that happened, right, that lower interest rates allows you to have lower monthly payments. So it creates higher affordability, which means people are generally likely willing to pay a little bit more for their property, right, depending on the monthly payment. Conversely, when you see that interest rates are higher, it drives affordability down because your mortgage rates are high, so it drives your payments up. And on top of that, that causes your purchase prices to either get capped with pressure towards the downside on closing prices. Now, if you're pursuing a BRRRR strategy, what is the BRRRR strategy? BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Now, let's use an example. Why is the ARV, the after repair value, so correct? Because if you were buying a property, let's say $20,000, and you bought it in June of last year, and it took you 3 months, right? You bought it for $20,000, you renovated it for 50 grand, you get it rented out in 3 months, and you are now looking to refinance. If you bought $20,000 cash and you renovated for $50,000, you're on at $70,000. So now, if you're able to make that home worth $100,000, you just created a little bit of equity in your deal by creating $30,000 of spread with forced appreciation. That allows you to go get a debt service coverage ratio loan, a DSCR loan, and pull back out 70% of the home's value in the form of loan proceeds. Now that gives you the ability to take the same 70 grand you put in, take it back out. It's not taxable because it's a loan proceed, and put it towards your next deal. And the next deal might be a $30,000 acquisition with a $40,000 rehab, but now you get to do it over and over and over again. And that is why the BRRRR strategy is so popular, because it's a lot more scalable at a faster speed because it gives you a velocity when you're with your investment capital. Now, What's that in comparison to? Well, the alternative is, well, you can save up money from your full-time job, put money towards a 20% down payment, 25% down payment, hope that property cash flows or appreciates, and you do it all over again, which means that you have to save up money from your full-time job towards another 20% down payment to do it all over again. And that could be very time consuming. And now I'm not saying that that can't be successful. Like lots of people are successful doing that strategy. So don't get me wrong. It's like a nice, slow and steady way of approaching it. But the BRRRR strategy is more scalable, faster because you get to use the same pile of capital over and over and over again. Right? Makes sense? All right. So that's what we're tracking properties that are coming on the market. And it's so important for me to track all the data attributes. So let me just plug in the address right here and add it to my list so that I can always quickly reference these details when the time comes. So if I ever see another property, right, that's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2490 square feet with a similar type of year built, it's built in 1956. This property is being listed for $199,000, which means on a price per square foot perspective, this property is being sold at $80 a square foot. This property was listed how long ago? 21 hours ago, so February 6th, listed 2625, and this lot size is 0.28 acres. Does this property have garage? Yes, there's a garage. One car. Yes, one car garage. No basement, no HOA. What neighborhood is in, so I can just simply look at the map and I can zoom out and I can note down to myself, hey, this property is closest to between Woodcrest and Kilo Springs. Between Woodcrest and Kilo Springs. So now next time I see a property in this area-ish, I can quickly refer back to, hey, if it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and 2,400 square feet, I might say, hey, what if I convert it to a 4-bedroom? And I make it look like this home in terms of condition, finishes, similar type of kitchen. And this helps me take as much guesswork out of the project, right? So this is how the kitchen looks like for this home. And if this home, in fact, does sell for the dollar per square foot that's listed at, then I can say with confidence to a contractor, hey, renovate my home to make it look like this. Because this is the expected dollar per square foot that I would want to get back out on the refinance because I have proof, right? Actual evidence of a sold property, similar square footage, similar type, right? Because what's the perfect comp? Perfect comp is, hey, if you bought the property right next door and this had similar square footage, similar lot size, same year built, same finishes, same bed bath count, blah, 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 that'd be a perfect comp. But that's usually never the case, right? Especially when it comes to 4-bedroom property. So as you go across man-made borders, quote unquote, if you go to other side of this Route 75 or other side of I-59, you're in completely different neighborhoods. Similar if you were to go across these parks or these creeks, you're in completely different areas. So in a market where it's street by street, the more accurate you can get with the type of properties and the location in the market that you're looking at, the more confidence you have, the more risk you can take out of the process, right? There's some things that you can't control, right? You can't control what's happening to the 10-year yield. The government does that, right? You can't control that. But you can now understand, hey, if I'm buying a property today, I might be looking at sold prices from today when interest rates are near its 12-month high. The interest rates are affected by the interest rate on the 10-year yield and the spread between the 10-year yield. Historically, that spread is 1.5 to 2%, but it's gone as high as 3%. So if you were to buy properties today and you're refinancing 3 to 6 months from now, you might be looking at properties that are being sold as comparable sales value using today's interest rates, even though, hey, interest rates might go down later, right? So that drives a lot of risk versus if you were refinancing today, which means that you bought in September and October when rates were really low and you're refinancing today. I mean, you might be looking at properties that were sold in September, October when interest rates were really low. So the purchase prices were higher. So there is risk now, right? And you have to decide what level of risk are you willing to tolerate. And if you can't tolerate that much risk, you might say, hey, I need to buy these properties at steeper discounts to keep that buffer as wide as possible so that I increase my chances to take back out as much capital as possible. And that's why this is not investment advice, right? I'm not soliciting any investments on the call. I'm just showing you all the work I do every single day to make notes here. Above average kitchen and bathrooms, not super modern. No painting or floor work needed. So now I just made some general cosmetic notes to myself because I can't see the roof. I can't really see the guts of the property, but I can understand, hey, visually, what does this property look like? So if I ever get a property, I can come out to this list. Now, next step is let's go ahead and underwrite this deal, assuming I'm just buying this property as is, right? Just so we can get some practice there. So this property is being listed for $199,000, 199,000. On a rehab side, I'm going to assume that I'm going to put in a cage for my HVAC to kind of lock it up so that I don't get stolen, because that just happened to me a few weeks ago where people stole my HVAC. I got 2 toilets I want to replace with high pressure flush toilets. That's my personal preference. I don't like getting clogged toilet calls, and I have never had a clogged toilet call with my high pressure flush assisted toilets. Because if you ever get a clogged toilet call, it's probably going to cost you $100, $200 on an emergency call to get a plumber out there. It's probably going to cost you $200 to replace the toilet if you decide to do it then. So I must have just spent a $450 now and just get that replaced in the beginning. So that's my personal preference. I try to take care of as much deferred maintenance or improvement projects as possible, so it increases my chances of one, not having more maintenance than I expect, and I don't have to worry about getting my energy drained, my time drained from these small little issues that pop up that just eats away at you and makes you not want to invest in real estate. That's how I do it. Okay. So then I don't need it in paint work. I don't need it in floor work. So that's why I zeroed out. I got $500 for some landscaping, and I got $1,500 for the roof in case there's some patchwork or something I need to do to the roof in case something comes up that I cannot see from the photos. So I got $45.60 for my rehab. Great. Now I determine my rent. So if I go to affordablehousing.com, I go to the owner section, I go to market rent estimator, I plug in the address, plug in my account, I can see the average rent here is $14.97. Great. So $14.50, I'm gonna round down, let's just be conservative, as my rent number. I'm gonna get my taxes and insurance number right from Redfin. So it says 118 right here. Obviously, you should double check with your county or assessor records before you close so that you can verify your numbers. And it says my homeowner insurance estimate is 154. So I'll do equals 154 times 1.2. I'm multiplying by 1.2 to add a 20% premium on top of the insurance estimate, because I'm assuming that insurance estimate of 154 is for a primary residence owner. And if I'm using the property as an investment property, typically insurance company is going to view that as a riskier asset. So that's why I'm adding more premium to it. Obviously, you should get a quote before you close on the deal, right? Then I got for my other expenses, I got 10% set aside for my maintenance every single month. Because hey, eventually at some point that roof is going to get replaced. The HVAC is going to get replaced. Just a matter of time. So if you don't set aside money today, you are underestimating your expenses and overestimating your profitability. So you're kind of lying to yourself. Don't be that person. Don't lie to yourself. These are expenses that you know you're going to have, especially if you're buying an old investor. Okay. Then I got 10% for my maintenance. I got 5% for vacancy. So if I do a 25% down here on this property in F19, my down payment is going to be roughly around 50 grand, which is F19 times B4, my 25% times my B4, my asking price. So my financing amount in K6 is going to be equals to B4, my asking price, minus my down payment. So that's going to give me about, I'm going to use 7.5% for my interest rate here. So if I'm using 7.5%, I got 2% for closing costs, $45.60 for my renovations, and I'm renting out this property at $14.50. How about cash flow? Negative. I'd be losing $259 a month. That's a negative 5.3% return. Assuming I bought this property for $199 with a $46 million rehab, 25% down, and 7.5% interest rate. Now, what do you need to buy the property for to achieve a, let's say, 10% return? I'm not saying 10% is a magical number, right? It just means that what is your criteria that you think is a deal? Because for some folks, they might not care about cash flow. For some of them, they might say, hey, as long as I cash flow break even after maintenance and everything, I'd be okay if let's say I bought a property in Southern California for $1 million and it's been going up 5% every single year. That's $50,000 every year. So they don't care about $200 of cash flow a month, right? They're building wealth that way. And that's why this is not investment rights, right? You got to figure out, hey, what is it worth to you for the execution risk that you're taking on? What is that worth to you? And you decide, okay, if that's the risk I want to take on, what return do I want for my time, my energy, my resources? And you say 4%, I mean, you might as well just go buy a 10-year yield and get 10% return, 4% return on your money, right? So if you are going for 10%, what do you need to purchase the property for? So let's say I go to 100 grand. Now I'm at 9.9%. Okay, so now I have some math, right? Does that mean you're gonna get this property for 100 grand? Maybe not. But at least now you know what is your criteria that you're using to determine what is a deal for you, quote unquote. And only you would know based on your portfolio strategy. Why you diversifying this way? Because some people might all want all cash, or some people might want some cash for some appreciation. Right? That happens. Now, let's see. Let's say your interest rates drop down to 6%. So if it goes down 1.5 points, right? Just pay attention to what doesn't matter what politics side of the politics you're on. Pay attention to what they're talking about, right? I believe I saw a recent Bloomberg article talk about Scott Bessent, Bloomberg Scott Bessent focus on 10-year yield. See, this is what you got to pay attention to. This was the article I saw where Bessent, the person that Trump just appointed, says that he wants to focus on lowering 10-year yield, which directly affects the 30-year mortgage interest rates. So they don't have to affect the federal cut. You got to pay more attention to the 10-year yield, not the federal interest reserves, right? Because 10-year yield operates faster. They might do a slow dance with one another, but the 10-year yield is much more fast, and it affects your 30-year mortgage rates. Okay, so pay attention to what's going on. So if that interest rate drops to 6%, what happens to your cash and cash return? It just jumped almost 2.75%. So you might say, hey, now I'm willing to pay 111 grand. I'm willing to pay $11,000 more, assuming everything else stays constant, right? 25% down, but my interest rate's now 6%. I'm renting out for $1,450, but now I'm cash for $286 a month. That's a 9.9% return. So that's why I want to highlight to you what happens when the mortgage rates go down, because it increases your willingness to pay more. And in this scenario, we saw just exactly how much I want. One more scenario. Let's say you went into property, you bought it with an inspection contingency, but then your rehab tripled. Let's do that. Right? Your rehab tripled because they found something behind the walls, or maybe they found some mold, or they're like, oh, this roof is actually leaking. It's really old. You should replace it. Okay. Well, you tripled it in B6. And now your cash and cash return jumped back down from 7.9%, even though your interest rates has dropped 1.5 points to 6%. So now you might say, I have to go back to 100 grand because my rehab tripled. So now, even though my rehab tripled to, let's call it $14,000, just using round numbers here, 25% down, 6%, I can still achieve a cash and cash return of 10% and cash for $335 a month if I'm able to get this property back for 100 grand. So I might give an offer at 110, and then all of a sudden I found something during the inspection and I realized like, oh crap, that's gonna happen. So I have to lower my asking price by 10 grand. And that's how you take emotions out of the analysis, right? You have to figure out what inputs do you move up and down, what levers do you have to pull to figure out what is it a deal look like for you personally in your own portfolio. And only you can answer that, or with the guidance of your own investment professional, not me. All right. So hopefully this is helpful for everybody. If this is helpful, my hope is that you copy my homework, right? Look at the same deal and analyze today using the same spreadsheet. You guys want to copy a spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the get deal analysis tool, plug in your name, email, your phone number. Just the fastest for you to get a copy spreadsheet. And my hope is that you copy my homework, right? Start your own YouTube channel because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can say, I know this is a deal because I've been looking at prices for the past 497 days. Might that give you some comments that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. Can't say thank you enough. Thank you so much for being part of the affordable housing community. And today, I've been spending a week in Boston, and I'm in the home that I grew up in. And when I reflect, I'm just so grateful for folks like you yourselves that are listening to this channel and sharing the affordable housing podcast with folks. I appreciate it so, so much. If you can share the podcast with one of your friends today, that's all I'm asking. And leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That would mean so much to me. It means more than you might know. Because this is how we grow the community together. This is how we help other folks that's looking for housing. And this is how we debunk the myths about affordable housing. This is how we grow the affordable housing community, and we go and do that one family at a time. Thank you so much for being a part of all this. Without people like you caring about affordable housing, I would never have the home I grew up in. And I'm literally in the same room that I grew up in. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all so much. Have an amazing Friday, everybody. I hope you spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow for day 498. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.